Okay. So we had a question come up about pulsed output and whether or not we can count in the reverse direction. So the quick answer to that is no. And I just want to show you how the device will function in reverse flow. So if we go to setup and I go to pulsed frequency output, we're going to configure this for 1 kilogram per pulse. And we're going to be setting this to mass flow. So when the device is outputting on pulsed output, for every 1 kilogram that's going through the device, it's going to give us 1 pulse on the output, and it's only going to be in the positive direction. And what I'll do is I'll also set this up for current output 1, which is our universal IO slot, IO at slot number 3. And I'm going to configure this for minus 10,000 to positive 10,000 kilograms per hour. Now what this is going to do is it's going to put our 0 at 12 milliamps. And if we go reverse flow, our milliamp signal is going to go down to 4 milliamps. And if we go positive flow, it's going to go up to 20. And you'll see here that we'll pulse in the positive direction only, and we won't pulse in the negative direction. So I'll increase this number to say 7,400 kilograms per hour. We'll start pulsing in the positive direction. And our milliamp signal went up to around 18 milliamps. Now, if I bring it down to the negative direction, you'll see that our milliamp signal is able to adjust and we still get a valid reading, but our pulse output has stopped doing anything. Now, in a situation where maybe you want to count in the opposite direction and still get a milliamp reading, what you can do is you can configure this so that there's a setting in here for reverse flow, and you go to setup, advanced setup, sensor adjustment, and flow and arrow direction. So this is the standard, and if you put it in backwards or if you want to read in the opposite direction for your pulsed output, what you have to do is you have to go flow against arrow direction, hit OK. And now what will happen is when we go in the positive flow, which is with the direction of the arrow, we'll actually get a negative reading. Our 4 to 20 will go down, as you would expect with a negative reading, and you'll notice that our pulsed output isn't doing anything. So if you actually had reverse flow, you'd still get your pulsed output and your current would go up. So it's just a way of reversing that. The other thing too is we have internal totalizers on here. And I can go to, so we have 3 totalizers. And when you're configuring your totalizer, you can set it up for mass flow volume or corrected volume. We'll leave it on mass. Totalizer unit is kilograms still. And here's where you can change whether or not you want it to count forward flow only, reverse flow, or net flow. So in net flow, what it'll do is it'll count positive in the positive direction, and then it'll subtract from your total flow if it goes in the reverse. And these other two will always be positive regardless of. So if you go forward flow, it'll count positive in the positive direction, and then it'll just not do anything in the reverse flow, and the opposite for reverse flow. Now these values here, they're not. How do you say? You can read them in a digital way, but if you have a totalizer on your PLC that's counting off the pulses, these 2 totalizers could be different depending on how you got it configured, right? If you've got this one set for net flow, so it's going to count the positive and the negative flow, your pulsed output can only do positive. So at your PLC, this number would be higher than this one if you had any reverse flow. So it depends on which totalizer you want to use and how you want to configure that. Of course, if you set a totalizer up on the current output, right, and you had it configured in this way, it would look a lot more like the built-in totalizer at your PLC, because it would be subtracting from that totalizer based off of your current output. So those are just different ways you could configure that. I think we can stop the recording if you're good, or if you have any questions.